Well, welcome, New Haveners, to Kitchen Sink on WNHHLP. I'm your host, Lucy Gellman. And today I'm really excited, one, because I'm back in the studio live, and that doesn't happen that much. Usually I pre record. But two, because of my guest, who's someone who I've known for, I think, 3 years, 2 years. So I'm here with Coulter Davis. Coulter, hello.
Hello.
Um, and we're going to be talking about a lot of things. We're going to be talking about food because this is a food show. We're going to be talking about you and New Haven because this is also a New Haven show. And we're going to be talking about music and your new musical venture, which is called Clones of Clarence, which also I'm really excited to talk about the name as well.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
uh but first of all, I want our listeners to know. So I met you 2 years ago, 3 years ago
Yeah, yeah.
at Coffee,
Yes.
where you work and where I go probably too often. I've given coffee too much of my money because I'm a little bit of a caffeine addict. But I met you when coffee was just starting to think about live music and what it would take to have live music in the coffee shop. So I'm wondering if we can start there and talk about that.
Well, yeah, so I started working at Coffee about a little bit over 4 years ago now. And when I first started there, I was still kind of just like learning how to, just becoming part of the scene in New Haven as far as music goes with my music. And I just enjoy like listening to other people performing, and I want to know about the local scene. And also,
And I'm gonna ask you to get your mouth really close to. It's like a poetry slam. Like
okay,
go in, yeah,
right there.
yeah, right there, right
Um,
up on it, as it were. Yes.
so people would be asking over the counter if we had live music and when we had live music, even when we had no program to speak of. And I guess it's just because coffee as a shop and as a space is perfect for small events like live music and poetry and any other kind of thing like that to bring people together. And so I started a crowdfunding GoFundMe account, and we raised enough money to purchase a license to have music at Coffee.
And have you always really loved music? Have you always been into music?
Yeah, so my family, my father's a jazz musician and a instrument repairman.
And did you grow up here in Connecticut?
I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Awesome. So close.
Yes,
And
exactly.
and I was like Bridgeport. So I think Bridgeport gets a really bad rep.
Yes.
It kind of bothers me, but Bridgeport has a really vibrant music scene.
Yeah.
And for a long time, Bridgeport and New Haven were both vital to Connecticut's sort of jazz lifeline. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what it was like to grow up with your dad, in that framework.
Well, my dad had a lot of friends, kind of more like in the Norwalk, like Stamford area, New
Ah.
York City kind of area, that played music, and he played in a jump blues band when I grew up, and I remember listening to them play in my basement. But one of the things that I think about when I think about Bridgeport is like the cultural melting pot that exists there, and like there's a huge Portuguese um, population and now Brazilian population in Bridgeport that like seriously affected my music as I grew up, and I don't know. It's just like uh, I guess with food too. Like I remember turkey or not turkeys, chickens running in my backyard from the neighbor's backyard.
Oh, that's really fun.
Yeah, yeah. Little
And
things like that.
wait, so I have to ask, like, was that something that, so of course as a kid you get really excited about, but were
Mm.
your parents like, oh, those damn chickens, or did they get really excited about
No,
it?
they embraced the neighborhood, and like in fact, all the little neighborhood kids like now they like go to my parents as like the auntie and uncle neighborhood. But yeah, and then I grew up listening to my dad's music, and in fact, my family goes like way back in upstate New York in a town called Cambridge, New York,
Mm.
where like my great 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 grandfather like he brought like the music program to that town in like 1850. So
Wow.
it's really weird and weird to talk about too, when it comes to like my family history and music, how in my genes it is.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and then
And was there music in your home? I mean, did you grow up with a lot of music sort of in your home being played? You know, some families like the kids play music, the parents play music, and you end up growing up literally with someone like yanking out an instrument and jamming a little bit, which is kind of cool.
well, we had a toy room slash music room growing up.
That's
Um,
great.
so we had saxophones on the walls and like
Oh.
guitars hanging up. And so I had the wonderful opportunity to be able to have it around me. I went and took piano lessons when I was little, and that was great. But I think like just hearing the music that my dad played, and he exposed me to like tons of jazz that I wouldn't have heard unless I had him as a father.
That's really interesting. And you know, and as a kid, is that what you gravitated toward? So some kids are like, I like top 40,
Yeah,
which is fine. You know, that has its place, right? Maybe.
it kind of kept me out of the loop as far
Yeah.
as what my friends were listening to. And like I was just talking about this with someone that I work with the other day about how like I remember asking one of my friends what Red Hot Chili Peppers was.
Like, did you think it was a
I
food?
thought it was a hip
Like,
hop group.
oh, it.
And I totally didn't have that right. But I just didn't know. And I think as I grew older and I was in high school, there was the whole pop punk emo thing that I was a part of, but I didn't really connect to it until and now I'm really into R&B and jazz, and it's hit me. I feel like I had to grow into it.
Mm,
And
mm.
because I was exposed to it as a child, like now I can understand to it from a different level now. But
I like that. And then tell me about the culinary landscape when you were growing up too. Not just because this is a food show, but I actually think, you know, the environment you grow up around. So when we were still off mic, we were talking a little bit about the fact that like regionalism is a real thing in this country. I'm from the Midwest, and like to the best of my knowledge, people on the East Coast don't make things like tuna noodle casserole.
oh, but that's so I would say my mom she's full Puerto Rican. My
Mm.
father he grew up in upstate New York, and he grew up kind of cooking what like his mom would make lots of like casseroles, tons of
Oh,
casseroles.
interesting.
And so he would always tell me, they would pour milk over bread and like they would put some sugar on it, and that was like a great lunch. My mom, I grew up like eating like rice and gandules with her, and like a lot of pork, and a lot of garlic. And we also lived in Little Italy historically.
I thought you were going to say we lived in it, like we lived in Italy for a couple
No.
of, it just as a like, oh, and then this happened. That's yeah, but tell me about that, because um that, like, when you live in a specific neighborhood, it can't not seep into what you do.
Yeah, and so the food I cook now, I mean, I can't help but to see that like I use tons of garlic, but who
Mm.
doesn't? But at the same time, like
There are people who don't.
there are people who don't, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah, and like just I remember going to like there's an Italian butcher that was there from when I was a little kid that I think is still there now, and like just talking to them because they knew they just felt so knowledgeable as a kid, now when I go back, it's just like their establishments part of like the little north end part of Bridgeport that I
Mm-hmm.
lived in, and oh man, like tons of but like I said, Portuguese food now is taking over that area.
Yeah. And do you find yourself sort of bopping between New Haven and Bridgeport a little bit?
Now I do.
Yeah.
I think every time I go back to Bridgeport after living in New Haven, I like see more value in it every time,
Mm.
and I love going back. I love having Brazilian barbecue. I love I don't know. I love having home cooked meals with my parents. I go there and I cook for them, and so
That's
that's
really
my
sweet. And what are you cooking for them?
well, they have a barbecue grill, so sometimes I'll saute like some meat or not saute, let it kind of
Like simmer and
well, what do you call it? Marinade. That's the word I'm looking for. Marinate some meat and like let it sit for like 3 hours and then cook it on the grill.
yeah.
I'll do some roasted vegetables. I've been cooking a lot of rice lately. I feel like New Haven has this huge Japanese and like cuisine thing
Huh.
that is like emerging and like has affected my food for a
Well, I think there. I mean, I do want to ask you, and so let's just go there now. I kind of want to ask you about food trends
Okay.
because you're someone who is so in that world,
Yeah.
and probably you see it, and you also work in the Audubon Arts District, which I would say is maybe a misnomer,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit
Yeah.
at this point. Um, but both there and around New Haven, I've seen like 5 poke places pop up. And I know that it's part of this like trend, this trendy craze. You know, it's like, I don't know, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, we saw the cronut in New York City, and all of a sudden people were lining up at like 4 or 5 in the morning to get Dominique Ansel's cronut. And it's kind of the same thing. And on one end, I see places that are absolutely packed. And I think that's really great
Mm-hmm.
because any economic development that really succeeds is a win for New Haven because it's money coming into New Haven's economy. But I also wonder, like, how can 5 different places that are serving the same product sustain themselves?
Oh, I don't know. Well, I mean, I work at coffee, and I'm a huge fan of Pokemoto.
Yes.
And I,
I think we have run into each other there,
yeah,
actually.
I go there maybe too much, but and I can't help but to try to recreate it at home. But at the same time, I've been to Pokelicious, and I've compared them like
Wait, and where is
meticulous.
that one? Because I really I've seen like one on Grove.
Grove. Oh,
Um,
I haven't been there yet.
and I've seen one, but I've seen them pop up around town. So where is
Pokelicious
Pokelicious?
is right in front of Gateway Community College.
Okay, great,
And so that one, well, I've only known about those two places so far.
cool.
But I don't know. Well, one just serves more rice, maybe. Maybe one is fresher. I would say
Mm.
Pokelicious kind of comes off more as fresher.
Oh, interesting.
But they're both really great, and something about it, it's like refreshing. It's like it kind of gives you the same umami or sense that like you're getting from eating ramen.
Yeah,
Which I went into that for a little bit too
yeah,
with the mecha thing, but like I don't know, it's I love all kinds of food, and
yeah.
whatever kinds of food are popping up around me, I definitely go in and I try it and see what I think about it.
Well, I want to transition a little bit. You have your keyboard in the studio, which
Yes.
I actually think people can see if they're watching on Facebook Live. They can see like my wild gesticulations because I'm standing above the mic.
Okay.
So that's okay. But they can see you and they can see the keyboard.
Mm.
So I want to talk a little bit about music, but also I want to hear some music.
Okay.
So let's get into your new venture, which is Clones of Clarence, and the fact that you've been playing for a really long time.
Yes.
Why don't we, can you play something?
Yeah. All right. Let me try to do this real quick. Let's see. So.
And for people who are, I don't know, listening in their cars or at home, we're adjusting the keyboard. It's very exciting. I feel like you should have a song for keyboard adjustments.
I know. Oh. All right. Here we go. Let's do this.
Cool.
Sometimes in life get stuck in patterns. Ooh, oh. Sometimes in life you get stuck in patterns, and then you need to change it up. Oh, you need to move along. Alright. You gotta change your patterns. Gotta change your patterns. Yeah. You gotta change your patterns. You gotta change your patterns. You. That was a quick song there.
I like that. Wait, what's that called? Or are your songs untitled?
Well, that song is a song that I'm like almost done writing.
Uh-huh.
It's and that was also kind of like a short version of that song, but it's called "Change Your Patterns," and yeah. So right now I'm doing this more of like ambient chill hop style music.
So I was just going to ask you about that. Like what for you, what goes into something, and do you find that you come up with things like in the shower is a really great place to think about. I've found articles, but I imagine for musicians to think about music, sort of lounging around. Who are you listening to that affects what you're writing?
Well, yeah, I've been listening to a lot of this like studying music called chill hop that is just instrumentals of very simple patterns and progressions.
And where do you find it?
And you find this on YouTube. There's 24-hour constant streaming videos of this music.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they're really interesting. I mean, it's very simple. I love it though, but I've been listening to a lot of R&B, and I do this. I play like this for like 4 hours at home every day.
Oh man. Well, I have so many questions. Before we go on, I just want to remind listeners, if you've been hanging out with us here at WNHH, or if you're just joining us, this is WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven, streaming live at www.newhavenindependent.org. I'm Lucy Gellman. This is Kitchen Sink, and I'm here today with chill hop aficionado, Coulter Davis.
Nice.
Yeah, Renaissance man, coffee enthusiast, many things. And so we will get back into food because also like because it's lunchtime.
Yes.
So like who has a radio show at lunchtime, right? I should have brought sandwiches, but whatever. But I wanted to talk about something that you mentioned earlier, which was that you came to the hip hop and R&B train relatively late.
Yes.
Even though jazz is so much a part of that.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if you can tell me a little more about that.
When I first started working in coffee, everybody who works there has, I would say, kind of represents a different genre of music.
And coffee has really good music. Yeah. I will say that. Like consistently, coffee plays really good music.
And we try. And I think I kind of started to listen to what everybody else was playing, and I learned a lot of music within that first year. I started listening to this podcast called the Bandcamp Weekly.
Ooh.
Which is Bandcamp, which is this website that people can buy music from. It has great music, and anybody can put it on, and this one podcast really helped narrow it down for me. And I think I always find one or two good things from that when I listen to music, and I think I always try to bring that into the coffee shop and play it all week long.
And okay, and where can people? So Bandcamp Weekly.
Yeah. So
and like who does it? Who's hosting it?
This guy out of San Francisco named Andrew Jervis.
Okay, cool.
And yeah, it's really really wonderful podcast. A lot of Afrobeat music and R&B and folk music too, but like all of these kinds of things. That's where I find my music personally.
Yeah.
Um,
And so you mentioned folk as well. Like, has that factored into what you're interested in doing?
Totally. So,
Okay.
where my dad grew up, folk music is the music, folk,
In
bluegrass,
upstate New York.
country. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
And my dad, I mean, we used to like play around campfires, and I play banjo as well, which is something that I don't do that much, but like um, I grew up listening to tons of bluegrass too because all my dad's friends upstate play bluegrass music.
And so that's interesting because I've seen from time to time I've seen like flyers in coffee for bluegrass music. Um, but I feel like New Haven and actually the surrounding region has a like fairly strong bluegrass and old time jammy scene.
Yes,
You're nodding emphatically.
definitely.
Is that something? I mean, do you bring your banjo and jam?
Yeah, I used to go to this weekly like music jam. Sometimes I try to. I play like the ambient music with my banjo too, which is really
Ooh.
weird.
Wait, I don't even know what that means.
It means that I use my banjo with my looping pedal, and I'll like hit the front part of the banjo to create like a drum sound,
Mm-hmm.
and then do these. I don't even know how to describe them. Ambient.
Like
Sounds.
twangy.
Twangy,
Yeah.
but like very kind of like flowy, chill, relaxing, like finger picking kind of thing.
Oh, nice.
And so, yeah, I grew up with lots of folk music from my dad's and his friends' music, and New Haven. I would definitely describe New Haven's music scene as a folk scene and as a like kind of I don't know. There's this band called Swamp Yankee in New Haven.
Yeah. Although Danny Revisa just
Yeah.
moved, he left us.
He left us.
He went to
Man.
Philadelphia.
Everyone's going to Philadelphia.
We're not gonna say that. We're like,
No, it's
don't
okay.
reinforce it.
Yeah. Stay here. Stay here.
Stay here. Yeah.
But yeah, New Haven has that vibe about it, and I book the music at Coffee, and I would say a lot of the music we bring into Coffee is folk music.
Yeah, so let's get into the live music at Coffee because it
Yes.
seems that it very much started when you were spearheading this effort. It was totally an experiment, and you didn't know if it was going to work, and you didn't know if people were going to come.
Mm-mm.
And I've come to a couple of the nights where there are a ton of people there. I mean, Coffee is a relatively intimate space,
Yes.
and so a lot of people come. Sometimes they're mic'd, sometimes they're not, or
Yeah.
or amped, I guess.
And they don't even have to be. It's such a small space that even an acoustic guitar or a ukulele player with just
Right.
nothing and just singing, it sounds wonderful, and people love that.
And so, with that sense of experiment, when you started, and maybe even now, do you kind of feel like, okay, I'm just gonna go full out like gangbusters, gonna get everyone I can think of over different genres and mix it up, see what works, see what doesn't, and if I have two people at a show that I thought was gonna do super well, that's okay.
Yeah, we have some people who are like veteran musicians, and like their sets are meticulous. We have some people who come in and they don't know what they're doing, but they do a great job anyway. And
They
it's-
don't know what they're doing in terms of they're new musicians or they're not live performers.
or like they didn't even have a plan or something like that, or they're
Oh.
new musicians, like
Yeah.
still in high school.
Wow.
And I'm now after doing this for 3 years for the music, I would definitely say I'm trying to get a younger crowd in.
Oh, interesting.
And
Yeah, and how young? Because one thing that is interesting in New Haven is the city does have all ages venues, but there are also some venues that, and I'm experiencing this right now. I am working with a group of really wonderful high school journalists who have said, "Oh, I want to cover music. I want to cover music," and there are really interesting bands coming through town that they can't go to because they're at venues where you have to be 21 to get in. Not a problem for you or I, but totally a problem if you're 14 or 15 years old.
And those are some of the people. The last performance that we had at Coffee was a band from the neighborhood music school
Oh, wow.
right next door, and they had, or ECA right next door still.
Mhm.
they had like there was tons of people who came in just to see their friends, and they were great. And it was a really wonderful. It was wonderful seeing it and having like a nostalgic moment, and being like, this is why I wanted this in the first
Mm.
place.
And for when you say a nostalgic moment,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely visited. I saw some shows of my friends when I was in high school,
yeah.
and those are the best because you're supporting your friend, and you're there with a bunch of people. It's like a productive party.
Yeah. And so also like let's talk about supporting young musicians because it's kind of this like it can be a complicated and messy and also very beautiful thing. I mean, do you feel like partly you're embracing that permission to fail? So I've seen some young musicians who are really good, and my heart just explodes listening to them. And then I've seen some people who are like, hey, our band's name is Imploded Pancreas, and we're going to rock out. And they do. And at the end of the concert, you need like 4 or 5 ibuprofen.
Yeah, I mean, I also. Do you mean like, is this like the kind of music I bring to coffee, or?
No, no. I think, also I'm interested in where you're looking. So I know Brian Slattery, who's a wonderful music writer who works here at the New Haven Independent. He's also the arts editor. He's been looking at SoundCloud and Bandcamp to look at artists who are starting out, and often their stuff is totally amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, now and we live in a world where anybody can make really great
Mm-hmm.
sounding music, and and you can do it in your bedroom or your bathroom. And like,
Right.
it's like totally like I haven't really gone on the search. I've kind of put it out there like we're looking for musicians. Please come and try to play. But like it's a good idea. Now I'm starting to get to the point where I'm a little sifting through it and
Mm.
finding stuff. I always go for more relaxed music only because of coffee is known for its
Right.
a studying place.
Right.
But like recently, I've discovered, people. There's certain musics that are really great to like just have going, and like the artist feels happy, because they're playing the music that comes from their soul, and
Mm.
like the people in the shop are like taking out their headphones, and they're like, "What's going on?"
Oh,
Like,
nice. Yeah.
and like those little moments, sometimes like the person in the front of the shop will be like, or the artist will be like, "Hey, thanks for that," and like everyone in the back will be clapping, and I
Oh,
always have the
nice.
curtain closed to
Mm-hmm.
keep it like a study space in the back and a music space in the front. And when everyone in the back is clapping, it was a good performance. And
Mm.
like the people in the front have started. It's become like a little joke for the musicians who play at coffee. It's like if you can get the back clapping, that's how you know you're doing a good job.
Well, I want to remind listeners if you're just joining us or if you've been hanging out with us here, this is WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. This is Kitchen Sink. I'm Lucy Gellman. I'm here with Coulter Davis, and we're talking music, his new venture, Clones of Clarence, and a little bit of food in New Haven, too. Coulter, I'm wondering if you can play another piece for us, and then maybe we'll talk about that and some food
All
as
right,
well.
this one's gonna be instrumental.
Oh, excellent. Does that have a title or no?
Not yet.
And really close to the mic.
Not yet.
Sorry. I'm going to keep harping on that. So I wanted to talk a little more about Clones of Clarence. Also, I love that title. So, first of all, where does the title come from? And did you were you taking a shower one day and all of a sudden you thought I really I want to start a music venture. I want to do something.
Well, I've been making music since I was 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like for myself, I started out playing guitar and playing kind of more folky kind of music, and I did start writing songs like that early, and it kind of I've been playing piano the whole time, but just for myself, and I never thought that music would ever be more than a hobby for a long, long, long time. And when I moved out of my house and moved out into the world and into New Haven, I kind of realized that playing music is what makes me spiritually happy, I guess, is like a great way to say it.
Wait, I want to hear more about that. Like way before we even get into the title of this, because there are a lot of ways that one is spiritually fulfilled. I think the way some people talk about it is like just decide the altar at which you pray, right? And it can be something secular if it leaves you feeling like that part of you is full at the end of the day. So for you, has that always been music?
It's always been music. Like I would sit at the piano when I was stressed, and I would just play it out. And it'd be by the end, I'm like, that it was. I don't even know what I played, but I feel a lot better now, and I think, yeah, after a long week of thinking about little things that really don't matter in the long run, that's like what matters to me. And so that's when I decided to have a project. With a name, and I always wanted to have something with alliteration.
Okay.
And Clarence is the name of an important family member in the history of like the Coulter family, which is like my first name is Coulter, but as far as it goes on my dad's side, it's like the last name. It's this weird thing.
No, I want to hear more about this because I've heard about families who do that. In some ways it's a Southern thing.
Okay.
So a good friend of mine is named Ramey, and that was her mom's maiden name, and her for years and years back and back and back. But I haven't heard about it on the East Coast and in New York.
I didn't even know that was a thing, but I mean, yeah, I guess it's a way to preserve the name, and I definitely going up there's a whole Coulter school district.
Oh wow.
And there's tons of people with the last name Coulter, and they're all my family.
You famous.
I guess. It's just but for me, I think like my family we were saying like
No, you're the name of the band where
right,
it comes
Clones
from.
of Clarence Coulter. And I just love that his name, and not even that he had anything specific to do with the music part of my family. Just like, I don't know, Clarence Coulter, I thought that was a strong name. So Clones of Clarence, maybe I'm the clone of Clarence.
And did you, before that came to, or did it come to you pretty quickly, or did you find yourself
It came at once when I was 12 years old.
Oh my gosh. Wait, so you've basically been building this and like maybe building up do you get stage fright?
Oh, yes.
Really? Oh, well,
but
at least in the
it's more
studio,
eye
you hide it
contact
very
or
well.
something.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, so it just totally came to you. Do you remember where you were and what you were doing?
I don't know. I was, I think I was still playing like on the guitar, and I was, having the fantasy of being on a great stage and just like a bunch of people all entranced by my music, and I was like, well, I have to have a name. And I always think of this joke. It's always a joke at coffee, like when somebody says something silly, like that'd be a great band name. And so I always like have to play it out as if like, welcome to the stage, blank, and Clones of Clarence is a great name to say that to.
Is it just you, or is it?
It's just me right now, and it's I guess it's my brainchild,
Okay.
and it's just music that I make. I have all my music that I've been kind of collecting over on SoundCloud,
Mm.
um, and it's just like SoundCloud.com/Coulter Davis, and it's just all these little sound bits that I've made. I sort of released an album under the name Clones of Clarence,
Ooh.
but kind of covertly and not really telling anybody about it. Um, and so I've been working on this for a while, ever since I was 12 years old, and now I'm trying to make it into something legit, I guess is the
Yeah.
word.
And so first, because we're at the top of the hour and the FCC mandates that I do this, you are listening to WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. I'm Lucy Gellman. This is Kitchen Sink, and I am here with Coulter Davis. We're talking music, food, and New Haven. That was a lot to say, but now we can go back to these things. So, do you feel like there's kind of a crosstalk with your 12-year-old self?
Oh, with the music that I'm making,
Yeah.
I'm always kind of having these like flashbacks and being like, well, okay, is this like the right trajectory?
Okay.
But then every time I think like that, I'm thinking too much. You know,
Oh, really?
like the fact that I'm making music and the fact that it sounds good, it's just reflecting what I'm into right now. And I think that's with a lot of musicians. But and it kind of has to be like parts of doing like don't be afraid to be yourself through your music. So I think that's for me.
And even in, so it's, I mean, it's interesting because Clones of Clarence has like this long lifeline, but then in some ways it sounds like it's still in its fetal stages. But do you just let things come in and sort of permeate that bubble and influences flow in as they do?
Yeah, certain songs, I will be riding my bike and I'll just be starting to hum something, and then I'll start to make some lyrics to it,
Oh,
and I'll
nice.
be like, that has to be part of the repertoire. Like that has to
And
be.
are you someone who is oral, like AURAL, enough that it just, you commit it to memory? Or do you write it down as soon as you get somewhere?
Usually, I pull out my phone and I sing it into my phone as a voice memo,
Oh, that's really smart.
and so I have like 200 voice memos. Half of them I haven't listened to, or maybe 75% of them I haven't listened to.
Oh man. But see, that's like so Lin Manuel Miranda, who I don't know if you listen to his stuff, he's the mind behind Hamilton and In the Heights before that, which unfortunately not enough people, everyone knows Hamilton and not enough people know In the Heights.
Mm.
But he does these things called demo tapes, and of course his sell like hotcakes because he's famous. But on it, you hear him basically doing like a voice memo. I mean, it's like one step up from a voice memo, and probably he's in some studio close to Broadway, like the Broadway Times Square area, and just making it sound rough after the fact.
Uh-huh.
But I love that idea of releasing something so people know about process
Yeah.
and maybe what didn't make it into the final product.
Totally, totally. I love the idea of saving things for later.
Mm.
I think like sometimes I'll like late night, like maybe 3 a.m. I'll be like sitting in the kitchen and I'll be like, what have I recorded? And I'll go through it and I'll be like, wow, this one needs a name. This one has to be on.
Does that happen a lot?
Every couple of months. Like
Okay.
I just record. I have a project with someone else too that I work with. And I've been focusing a lot on that too. It's kind of nice to have several things going on, and so this is my personal project that I've been doing, the Clones of Clarence thing. But like some of the recordings are from that. Some of them are just me by myself. I don't know. I love going back and like editing certain things and writing lyrics on top of old recordings.
So tell me what it's like to be both performing solo or doing this solo venture and doing a collaborative venture at the same time.
It can be hard because sometimes I find myself more invested in the collaborative adventure.
And tell listeners who your partner in crime is.
So my partner in crime is Bobby Tan,
Excellent.
and he works with me at Coffee, and his music is wonderful, his solo stuff. And this thing that we do together is called Phella, Phella.
Excellent. Kind of in the vein of fat astronaut.
Yes,
So yeah,
exactly. Felamite is its full name, so I don't know how that works, but I mean,
like MIGHT.
MYTE,
Oh,
Felamite, one
okay.
word. Um, but yeah, I play bass and he sings and plays drums, and we write these very short Ramones kind of like the fact that like a Ramones style song is in the sense it's like it's just 2 minutes and it's done.
Mm.
It's got lyrics, kind of rock music, totally different from the stuff that I make on my own.
And do you find that you do it? Is it like not spontaneous composition, but do you kind of like do it and push it out in the same way that like some people text each other poems during April, which is National Poetry Month?
Oh well, we totally send each other recordings all the time.
Awesome.
We share a studio, and so we'll meet there twice a week. And that's the difference is why sometimes I get more involved in that project, is because we have this scheduled time to do it.
Mm,
And for me, Clones of Clarence is whenever I'm alone, like
right.
my alone time meditation process.
Oh, that's very cool. Well, in talking about beta test, this kind of beta testing with music, I want to bring it back to food
Okay.
and to coffee.
Yes.
And not specifically coffee, the place where you work, but also coffee with like a lowercase c,
Mhm.
like the thing that contains caffeine
Yes.
that makes us all happy. um, but in beta test, I mean, do you find yourself sort of playing around in the kitchen a little bit
Oh
or a
yes.
lot of it?
I used to more. I have this little single, group head espresso machine in my kitchen
Mm.
at home, and so I will totally make some crazy flavor lattes. I like doing tea lattes.
Okay.
Sometimes like I'll steep some chamomile like in the milk itself, which is
Ooh,
really weird, but like
like the herb.
right, I'll
Yeah.
put like tea bag into the milk. I'll steam that up and let that sit, and
Hmm.
I'll pull some espresso and make these weird concoctions.
Well, that sounds good because chamomile's a little bit sweet and
It's like
very mellow.
exactly, it's like a mellow plus espresso weirdness.
And do you, especially in making those like lattes, for instance, do you find yourself cynical at all about like hot food trends? So before we were talking about poke, and I think we're still riding out the matcha latte trend.
Yes, yes, but people have started asking for it more.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I think matcha. I haven't really. I'm not the biggest fan of it myself. More for the texture
You don't
mostly.
like drinking grass? It's shocking.
But that's yeah. I just haven't really tried that too much myself.
Yeah,
So,
but do you find that you're not super cynical about it?
oh yeah. I mean, sometimes you totally get that way. I mean, especially well, we always like joke about certain trends during the day. It's like today's the chai day, today's a cappuccino day.
Wait, do you really?
Oh yeah.
Like what is that? Because I remember. Oh, so non sequitur. But I remember when I was in high school, I did this thing called a senior project where I got to watch a neurosurgeon work during surgery, which is possibly not legal, but that's okay. Um, and uh, and I remember being so surprised by what people talked about in the OR
Mm.
because it was really like often it was a lot of foul language and like a lot of poop jokes.
Oh what?
And so what is the talk behind the scenes in at coffee?
Oh, well, I mean, the behind the scenes talk, it's definitely like we talk a lot about music in the sense of like silly conversations about Madonna that you would never think to have,
Really?
or like or we'll just like a lot of factoids. A lot of us are like music encyclopedias, and then you know, sometimes like customers can be a little crazy sometimes, so we'll talk about that.
Mm.
But at the same time, like, we always joke that coffee could be a great sitcom.
Oh
And
yeah.
just like these little things that don't matter, but they blow up into these silly proportions.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's in the restaurant industry more globally.
Totally.
You see some crazy stuff
Yes.
happen. So before we go on, I want to remind listeners, if you're just joining us or if you've been hanging out with us here, this is WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven, streaming live at www.newhavenindependent.org and on lots of different social media channels, including but not limited to Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, all like some things that I'm too old for at this point. I'm here. I'm Lucy Gellman. I'm here with Coulter Davis, and we're talking about music, food, New Haven, and his venture, Clones of Clarence. So Coulter, I want to ask you, in the same like food conversation, what's your what's your go-to, and what's your guilty pleasure?
Oh man. Well, okay. My guilty pleasure is pasta.
That's not that bad.
It's not that bad. I always joke about this Portlandia skit that I feel like where Fred Armisen thinks he's a little fat and then he realizes he's a pasta addict.
Oh no.
And I feel like
Oh,
that
that's
applies
funny.
to me sometimes.
Okay.
But at the same time, um, but then my go-to food right now is kimchi and rice.
Oh wow.
And like it's just this weird. I've just started getting into kimchi and like trying to cook it on my own and seeing what
Mhm.
I can whip up and so I've been like making a lot of sushi rice and kimchi
Ooh,
things and
nice.
yeah,
And
yeah.
when you say make it on your own, you just ferment it at home.
Oh no, no, no. I don't. I mean, I buy pre-made kimchi, but
Okay.
then I'll like spice it up with different other spices and ingredients to
Oh,
see
nice.
what I can make it different flavor palettes and textures.
And since you mentioned going home and cooking, do you find that you bring all of that home, or do you more traditional stuff for your folks?
When I go home, I always try to do like something more traditional, but sometimes I get excited about the food I've been eating.
Mm.
And so I always talk about it with them, but I never make them rice. And I should. I totally should.
I don't know. I don't know if there's any like shoulda, coulda, woulda.
I guess
Um,
not, really.
yeah. So as we wind down, I'm realizing that I also didn't ask you about school at all.
Yeah. So my quick school, I went to school growing up in Bridgeport at magnet schools, and then and then when I went to high school, I was in this special magnet program in Norwalk, not in Bridgeport. I took the train every day to Brian McMahon High School in Norwalk to learn Chinese and to learn it was called CGS Center for Global Studies and it was like you could focus in on either Japanese, Arabic, or Chinese.
And why did you choose Chinese?
I, I chose Chinese because I felt like it was important to know that one out of the three,
Hmm.
and also just because such a big country and it's like such a huge influence on the world, and as I, I'm right because every day that I live in New Haven, it feels like it's more relevant to me in
And
my
was
life.
it Mandarin?
Mandarin
Yeah.
Chinese. Yeah, I went to China twice in that time. I um, I, I mean, I went to China and like for the food too, and which
Mm-hmm.
is great. I learned a lot about. It kind of took me out of the mindset that, I mean, in America, most of the Chinese food we eat is from one place in China,
Yep.
and
Or it's the American invention. I mean, like General Tso's chicken is
it's not like
not a
it's
Chinese dish.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but exactly, it's like it's our version of the food, which my mind was blown in so many different
Mm.
directions when I left the country for the first time. Um, just like regional Chinese food, how in the north it's bread, in the south it's rice, and we went to the west, and like there's this whole Arabic and Muslim culture that like exists because of the Silk Road. I didn't know any of that,
Mm.
so it blew me away. After that, I actually in high school, my junior year, I left for Rotary Exchange for a year, and I lived in Ecuador.
So cool.
And it was a big part of my life. I've trained myself sort of to like not talk about it as much because I talked about it so much for such a long time. But my host dad there, I stayed with one family, which was weird. Most of the people like switched at least twice. I stayed with one family the whole time, and my host dad is a chef now. But at the time, he was just an architect
Oh wow.
and who was obsessed with food and obsessed with feeding the everybody. And oh man, he really influenced me in a way too. Now, when it comes to like hospitality and like just trying to be, but hospitality among friends and just like having that group, I think is so important. And I learned a lot from him too, and just like the culture there too. So everything's
And do you find I have to ask because before we were like, okay, no one else can leave New Haven.
yeah,
Do you find yourself getting utsy and sort of having that urge or that itch to travel?
totally. Like I find myself not leaving the city,
Mm.
and I'll just be riding my bike around town a lot. Um, and then when I do leave, it's always like even to Bridgeport. Like I said, it's a completely different culture
Yeah.
there. So it's like just little trips out of the town get me out of my headspace. I recently took a trip to Philadelphia
It's
just to see it.
Philly is a great city.
It's a great city.
It's a great city, but y'all should stay in New Haven. Like
Stay in New
listeners
Haven.
should stay in New Haven.
But I mean, it was awesome just to get out of New Haven, just to get out of my head a little bit, and
Yeah.
then coming back, I can be like, okay, and now I know what I have to do,
And what do you have to do?
and what I have to do is, you know, really make my friend group more, um, you know, not sustainable, but just strengthen my friend group and make sure that my friends, that that we're not just work friends. And sometimes I find in New Haven, it's hard to keep in touch with people.
Yeah.
It's like the city kind of makes everybody into their own places, and like I feel like having the group dynamic is so important for everybody's health as humans.
I like that. So that in some ways feels like since we're winding down on our 60 minutes, and in some ways that feels like a nice place to end. But I want to hear another thing. So I know that you mentioned when you came in that you tried to write a piece, which is very ambitious.
Mm.
Would you like to play that
I'm gonna
one?
try my best.
Okay.
I'm gonna. It was the song that I started the show out with, but I'm
Oh,
gonna sing
awesome.
on top of it.
Yeah,
See
I
if I
would
can
say go
sing.
for it. Thank you so much. And before you go into it, because I'll have you play us out, how can people find you?
So you could probably find me at coffee any day of the week, most of the days. Also on SoundCloud, you can listen to my music, soundcloud.com/Coulter Davis, and that's the best way to listen to my music.
Great. Fantastic.
All right.
And they can find you in the flesh. Do you feel, sorry, one last question. I've talked to some restaurant professionals who feel like, they're around food all day. And so they go home and the last thing that they want to do is cook. I talked to Josh Cantor, who's the bread baker, the head bread baker at Atticus, a couple of weeks ago. And he said, yeah, I really don't cook a lot. Like my cooking at home is pretty minimal. Do you feel that way about coffee?
With coffee, I've definitely started drinking more brewed machine coffee lately in the past couple of years. I started working at a place that used to exist called Greenwell, and that was my introduction into the coffee world.
Was that in Bridgeport?
That was here in New Haven.
Oh, wow.
It was a wonderful place, and I was actually cooking there too. And I think, like when I was there, I was so inspired to make coffee at home. They were the ones who gave me the espresso machine
Oh,
that I
wow.
have now, and like
Where was that?
it was down. There's a place called Cedarhurst now,
Oh, I know where that is. Yeah.
and but it was the same place. They were the ones
Okay.
who put the tree in and all of that.
Oh, wow.
But it was a great experience. It really pushed me towards up like, and to me, coffee was an upgrade, and like because it kind of fit my personality a little bit better. Um, and do I go home and cook? I think I tried to recreate poke. I tried to recreate mecha. I
Awesome.
tried to recreate all my favorite things about New Haven
Yeah.
in my own kitchen.
I like that. Awesome. Play us out.
All right.
And thank you so much, Coulter.
Thank you. herbs and spices, grab something from the fridge, and put a little love into it. Now I'm all set. Everybody's bring us together. Everybody eats. It brings us together.